Isn't that an amazing story? I know next to nothing about how Aboriginal stories need to be interpreted. And I want to make it very clear that my comments about this story are in no way intended to have any authority about this story. In fact, I would just love to sit around and have a yarn with some local Indigenous people who know more about this story and hear what they have to say. It would be fascinating. But as soon as I read this story on my little trip around the lake, I was just struck by the similarities between this story and our story about Eden. Two stories about trees. Trees with food. And they're not just ordinary trees, these are sacred trees, forbidden trees. The human characters in the story, they're young, they're innocent, and they're immature. The humans in the Garden of Eden, they'd just been freshly created. So they hadn't really experienced much of life. They didn't know too much. They hadn't yet gained any wisdom. Well, I had a bit of a hunt around on Google about the Njonji story, and I found another version of it which explained, because of course the first question I had is, what were the young men doing back at the camp when everybody else was out hunting? Like, that struck me as kind of odd. But it turns out that it was young boys who were uninitiated. That's why they were left back at camp. That's why they weren't out hunting. So they too lacked wisdom and maturity, because these are things that come with age and life experience. So in both the Eden and the Njonji stories, there's a clear command or instruction that was broken. And it was broken as a result of succumbing to temptation. This choice was made. It seemed like a good idea at the time, but it resulted in terrible and irreversible consequences, one of which was death. Now, cultural anthropologists would call these two stories origin stories. They're stories that explain how the present situation came to be. The present situation that we find ourselves in. How did this happen? How did we get here? And many ancient cultures have origin stories, and lots of them involve, interestingly, sacred trees. It makes sense because trees provide life, right? They give food and shade and even water. And all of those things sustain life when you live in a world without supermarkets and air conditioning. So Egypt, Mesopotamia, ancient Israel, where this story's from, and Australia. I was so fascinated by the similarities that I just found myself reflecting on them in parallel, like putting them beside one another. And I found that kind of raised some interesting insights for me. There was just one special tree in the Njonji story. It's the sacred flame tree. There were two special trees in the Eden story, and they were right in the middle of the garden, which had many other trees in this garden as well. The two special trees were next to each other. So you could stand in front of them and see them both at the same time. And God had explained about the trees to Adam. All these trees, they're all good. Eat from them, any of them. They'll sustain you. They're good for you. Except for that one. That one over there, that's got poison berries. Don't eat from that one, okay? Those berries, they look good, but they're not. They'll kill you. Don't eat them or you'll die. Any of the others, all good. Did you notice then that the humans could eat from the tree of life if they so desired? It wasn't that they couldn't eat from it until they'd passed some sort of test or something. It was theirs, given to them as a gift. They didn't have to earn it. They could just eat from it whenever they liked. There were no conditions, no limitations. Of course, it was right beside, remember, the tree of the knowledge of good and bad, the one with the poison berries. So to eat from the tree of life, they really should avoid eating from the good and bad knowledge tree, because if they ate from that one, they'd be dead, wouldn't they? And then they'd never get to eat from the other one. So they wouldn't be eating anything. So back to the two stories. The humans in Eden and the uninitiated boys, they didn't really set out to do a bad thing, did they? Their motivation wasn't to do, we're just going to be evil today. It didn't really work like that. The Eden humans didn't say to each other, let's go and disobey God and eat the berries. And the boys didn't say, let's go and chop down that sacred flame tree. You know, one thing just sort of leads to another. You can picture those two boys, can't you? It's two boys in one of the stories. They're sitting around, nobody else is here, they're bored, and a wallaby hops out in front of them. We can understand how they might want to chase down that wallaby and spear it. They knew they shouldn't. They were told not to, but, you know, what harm could it do, really? And then missing the wallaby and hitting the tree, well, that could happen. Pulling out the spear to find this plump, juicy grub on the end of it. Can't you hear them talking to each other about, oh, how could we get more of these? They're so good. And next minute, they're chopping down the sacred flame tree. They're destroying the one and only sacred flame tree for the sake of a few tasty grubs. And Eve, can you see her? She's standing there, she's looking at that fruit on the knowledge of good and bad tree. She's hungry, and here's this fruit, and it's beautiful fruit. She can smell it, she knows it's going to taste good, it's going to be good for food, and it's just the most beautiful fruit. It's pleasing to the eye. She's never seen anything so attractive. And finally, she knows that eating this will make her wise, because there was a snake who was a very shrewd and clever snake who told her that. Surely eating fruit that gives instant wisdom, surely that's a good thing. Wouldn't you want that? Instead of the hard, long road to gaining wisdom by life experience, by making mistakes, by learning how to fix them, by falling over and getting back up again and dusting yourself off, doing things that you thought were good, and then there's unintended consequences. You didn't realise that was going to happen. Then you have to stop and think what to do about those. Surely bypassing all of that and just getting the wisdom in one bite, surely that's a good thing. She knew that God had warned them, poison berries, don't eat them. But really, I mean, what would God know? Does he really know? And so she reached out her hand and she took the fruit. She reached out her hand and she took. And humans have been reaching out their hand and taking ever since. Taking things that aren't theirs to take. But that way of operating in the world leads to death. So this desire for instant gratification, the desire to possess all that's beautiful, the desire to gain the trophy without running the race, giving into those desires can lead down a path to death and not life. Taking what is not yours to take, maybe that's at the core of human misery. Just think about it. In September last year, hackers took personal details of 10 million Optus customers. Maybe you were one. Anyone? Yep. You know what it was like? We probably all know someone, if it wasn't us, who was impacted. And then not long after that, Medicare was hacked, and the hackers released sensitive medical information of thousands of people, designed to shame, designed to create fear. For the hackers, that's a quick way to get rich. Just take your hand out, take it, just take it. They weren't really negatively impacted. But for those caught up in the hack, at a minimum, it caused anxiety and stress and hours on the phone on hold. For many, it just turned their lives upside down, just ripped the rug out from underneath them. Someone somewhere far away took what wasn't theirs to take, and all these people here paid the price for that. A couple of days ago, a study published in the journal Science revealed that research funded by ExxonMobil predicted global warming with stunning accuracy between 1977 and 2003. During that time, the company publicly denied the climate science that their own researchers were uncovering so accurately. So for the sake of their own careers, for the sake of their stockholders, for the sake of their own short-term personal gain, it appears that the leaders in the company just kept taking and taking and taking to the detriment of the whole planet. Modern slavery, it's a thing. An estimated 50 million people are taken to live in forced labour or forced marriages. A quarter of those are children. They make our clothes, they pick our fruit, they work in our factories and in our abattoirs, they serve us in restaurants and in hotels. The supply chains that exist in businesses are so complex that even with strong government regulations in place, and we have them in Australia, even with them, it's hard for exploitation to be unearthed. If you own a mobile phone, if you are in a superannuation fund, if you shop at a supermarket, you are likely taking what is not yours to take without even being aware of it. The story of the garden is not something that happened once long, long ago in ancient times. It's as relevant and true now as it was when it was written. It's this picture, this really amazing picture of the human condition, an explanation of how we got here, of these complex injustices that happen when instead of eating from the tree of life, instead of walking with God, instead of ordering our lives according to the way that wisdom weaves its way through the universe that God's put there, instead of doing that, our society eats from the tree of knowledge of good and bad. It's what happens when our world sees the opportunity for a quick gain without the pain and seizes the low-hanging fruit. Because we're hungry and we can't wait to eat. Because it seems like a good opportunity that's going to bring us benefit. And we don't really think about the consequences of our actions that those actions might create for others. Because it's the shortest path to get what we want, and who wouldn't want that? But when we reach out our hands and take what isn't ours to take, it causes misery somewhere to someone. Sermon's taken quite a dark turn, hasn't it? And I'm sorry to say that there's no, and here's the solution. I have 5 easy steps. I tried. I mean, we can reflect on the ways that we might be personally reaching out our hand and taking what isn't ours to take. We can determine to think through the possible consequences. We can do that. It's a good thing to do. But we can't escape this world that we live in where we all, often without even realising, are eating poison berries. I'm hoping that you won't walk away tonight feeling terribly depressed, because this world is also, it's wonderful, and life is good and beautiful, and we don't want to lose sight of that. But we also might want to reflect together on the complex web of human connection that binds us all together. That when we do something over here, it impacts someone over there. We say the acknowledgement of country every week. We talk about walking together in the shared pain of the past and the shared hope for the future. The shared pain of the past was about taking. Australia was understood to be terra nullius, nobody's land. It was there for the taking. And as a result, terrible injustices were set in motion that had lasting impacts for generation after generation after generation. Injustices that can't be reversed. Injustices that we're all caught up in simply because we live in this land. January 26 is just around the corner. And however you are choosing to spend your January 26, it's an appropriate time to reflect on the words that we hear here at MCC every week. It's a good time to reflect, I think, on the shared pain of the past, but also to consider the shared hope for the future and maybe what that might look like. There's a referendum in our near future, sometime this year probably. And I think that if MCC is serious about walking in the shared hope for the future, as we hear and acknowledge every week, then we've got to make some effort to understand what this referendum is about and to consider our vote very carefully. And it's not my place to tell anyone here how to vote. But I do think it is my place to encourage us all to find out a little bit more about that referendum, to maybe do a bit more reading around it, to find opportunities to listen to our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander brothers and sisters, and to see if there might be better ways forward that might lead to life for everyone. So if you haven't already, these links will be in the newsletter next week, so it doesn't matter if you don't remember them here. But if you haven't already, I'd encourage you to read the Uluru Statement from the Heart. The link is there. There's also information has been compiled by the government about the Voice to Parliament, which can be found on that second website there. And there's an informational course that you can do in 15 minutes at the fromtheheart.com, which is, I found, quite informative. Wikipedia, of course, always has articles as well, and I've included that one. You know, as an academic lecturer, I actually like Wikipedia. I tell my students never reference this, but it's a peer-reviewed source, and it will tell you if there are issues and stuff. So, you know, Wikipedia gets hammered, but it's actually pretty good. And that article gives the background, it gives more detail about how the Voice in Parliament would work in practical terms, and it also gives various political parties their views on the issue and what they see as the pros and the cons. So maybe have a look at those, and TJ is going to put those in the newsletter next week. So, trees. Wait, maybe I'll go back. Trees. The ones we choose to eat from can determine which path we go down. So I want to finish with a third reading tonight, and this time it's from Psalm 1. Happy are those who do not follow the advice of the wicked, or take the path that sinners tread, or sit in the seat of scoffers, but their delight is in the law of the Lord, and on his law they meditate day and night. They are like trees, planted by streams of water, which yield their fruit in its season, and their leaves do not wither. In all that they do, they prosper. May we be trees planted by streams of water. Nick has a very important word for us now.